Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everybody. I love you all. My name is miahtheking, and I went to the aquarium this weekend, but I didn't stay long. There's just something fishy about that place. Now then, today I'm introducing a new segment to my channel to see if it's popular and if I should keep doing it or not, the Where Are They Now segment, where I go back and take a fresh look at some of the games I've reviewed on here a long time ago and see if they've finished, improved, worsened, or whatever. This video is by popular demand, as I have gotten a lot of people asking me to do this kind of stuff, so I better get a lot of views and subscriptions and likes for this one. Now, today this one is going to be on Sengoku Dynasty, a survival Japanese life simulator kind of game, developed not by the people who made Medieval Dynasty, correcting that mistake, but by Super Kami and published by Toplitz Productions, fully released and selling for $30. Now you might be asking yourself, why am I checking out this small YouTuber? Well, I'd like to think it's for the corny one-liners or the corny jokes at the beginning of each video, but in reality, it's probably because you're a very important, busy person, and I'm one of the few, if not only YouTubers out there who can help you figure out if you need a game in 10 minutes or less. So stick around and find out. Now, as the title suggests, we're checking out Sengoku Dynasty. My wife and I decided to jump back into the game and give it another try since it was officially released. Why am I doing it now and not then? Because I've been busy! But this week there aren't really any games I feel qualified to review or that might not be worth my time, so time to try something new, I guess. And you better like and subscribe and leave a comment, because if I don't feel like this is worth it, then this is just going to be it. I'm not going to do any more Where Are They Now segments. Okay, so enough jibber-jabbing, onto the actual analyzation of the game to see if it's made any actual progress. So right off the bat, I did notice something new. From the last time I looked at the game, the multiplayer joining was a bit abysmal. Has it changed? Not really. It's still crap. But they did make it easier for you to locate the multiplayer code. A nice little button on the main screen. But you can't pull up Steam's Messenger to copy and send the code to your friend. You still can't see the code to read it off to them. You still can't just manually invite them. So obviously these devs are kind of super dumb for not fixing this. My wife had to send me a message on Steam for me to be able to open the Messenger so that way I could send her the code. And to me, that's just really, really dumb game design right there, and you can't convince me otherwise. But at least they did add the ability to play as a female, so now my wife can play as a woman in the game, which was a really nice change from before and something she really appreciated. But after we hopped into the game, we immediately began running into technical problems. A really bad sign for this game. My wife was running into a lot of glitches and bugs. Now don't get me wrong, she doesn't have as good a gaming PC as I do, but even so, after letting the game adjust her settings automatically to fit her computer specs, she should have been running it smoothly. She is not. The game is glitching galore for her, which I wish I could have gotten clips and footage of it for you guys, but it was already irritating her. We're talking frame rate drops, getting stuck on nothing, clipping, freezing, the works. The user interface has been fixed in terms of speed. Items move faster than they did in the past from inventory to storage or vice versa. You have a quick change. Shift click now auto deposits or retrieve items, so that's good. But there is still very little, if any, tooltips explaining what things are when you're looking at them. So most of the time you're still pretty unsure or flat out have no idea what some of these things are, or worse, what they do or don't do. For instance, you'll frequently see a red error at the top left of your screen. However, when you hover your mouse over it, it tells you nothing. It's just some vague random symbol that you're supposed to automatically know what it means, I guess. So how the frick am I supposed to fix that error without knowing what it is? And the UI is pretty much like that the entire time. Combat is super easy, as you'll see here. This right here is my wife and I attacking a large bandit camp with nothing but wooden spears. Apparently it's supposed to be a big deal, but we handled it fairly easily. So the combat, at least here, was a bit super simple, and I'm hoping it's just because it's a starter area, but we've only been playing for a couple hours and yet we were able to beat these guys. Still seems a bit too easy to me. However, despite the difficulty, it did introduce newer combat mechanics that I just don't remember from before, or perhaps they are actually new. But now you can dodge, parry, and block, and they work really well, actually. The connection of weapons didn't lag or miss its mark, headshots were killing enemies, and overall, I think the combat was just fairly well designed here. So let's next talk about the negatives from my last video, kind of break it down and see if they made any improvements of what I said previously from then to now, alright? So the first thing I mentioned was the stability. They did not fix this. It's still broken as hell, as I mentioned earlier. Even if you take out my wife's issues and say, maybe it was just her PC, I was also getting frame rate drops, getting stuck on random nonsense, and for no reason, and also freezing. So the game's still unstable despite it saying it's fully released, and that's not all. I also discovered several sound bugs or sound effects simply missing. So that still hasn't been fixed, which is super annoying. I complained about the trees not having falling sound effects a year ago. They still don't have falling sound effects. Sorry about that. And there's animals. I'd say maybe four out of 5 times when you skin an animal, there's no sound effects for it whatsoever. So that's kind of annoying. The next problem I spoke about was the user interface. As mentioned before, it's been improved slightly in terms of speed, but not much else. It's really frustrating that they chose not to clean up the user interface or add tooltips. It's frustrating that a lot of the symbols here are still a mystery to me because the game chooses to never explain them. It's annoying that I can't figure out which house is which, so I have no idea if this house is mine or if it's one of my villagers. So the UI is still feeling incomplete and messy. However, they did give us sorting buttons, quick movement of items back and forth, and removed the lag of transferring items. But basically, in terms of item management, they improved the speed and cohesiveness of the transfer, so at least there's that, I guess. The next negative I mentioned was the connection issues with online co-op, but I've already mentioned earlier about how the stability is still kind of fucked, including the online connectivity. But I will say that the errors of reloading our game is gone, so now we can just hop right back into our game without issues, so at least they fixed that. And the last negative that I mentioned last time was the tutorial. It's still super janky. They almost made no adjustments to the tutorial. It still basically just pops up randomly and tells you to do something, but not the specifics of how to do stuff. It doesn't break it down in a cohesive way for you to learn. It's still kind of vague and generic while at the same time throwing paragraphs of information at you, which is just annoying to read. So of course, it took some legit time and dedication of studying just to figure out how and why to build a house. But of course, with missing information, we still didn't even learn all that we needed to know about the house. I'm more than a little annoyed that the tutorial is still so awful. So basically, when you look at it in more broad terms, despite the game being fully released, they still have barely fixed any of the issues that I mentioned before from a year ago. And yet they still have all these problems and released version 1.0. Yet a lot of these smaller issues have yet to be addressed. I think the largest disappointment for us was the stability issues. The game is already kind of janky in terms of animation and movement, but when you then add the stability issues, it makes literally anything, even something as simple as chopping a tree, feel irritating and tedious because of all the issues. However, the game maintained a lot of the good that it had going on as well. The game is still very well designed. They didn't make any huge changes to ruin the previous experience, and it's still the same basic game as it was before. In terms of management of your village, it's just as complicated as it was before, with zero confirmation that anything you're doing is actually making a difference. There's no screen to let you know how much resources your people brought in for that day, so there's no real easy way to figure out if they're even doing what you told them to do, which is kind of annoying. But it does look like they actually do their jobs as long as they have their tools, which is good because in the past they had issues with this. But still, for a village management system, it's still super janky. It's just not cohesive enough. I'd like for it to be more streamlined, and that's not the only thing I'd like for it to be more streamlined. The map is huge, and the game wants you to walk all the way over here to this place so you can talk to this guy just so you can walk all the way back home to grab what you need or craft what you need to accomplish his mission. Now, much more later on, and I mean much more later on, you can build fast travel stations, but until then you gotta walk everywhere, back and forth, over and over again, and it just starts to get more tedious. But again, they did add fast travel stations, which will end up being a huge help later on, and I'm very grateful for. And the fact that your villagers are actually doing their jobs and producing resources is a huge improvement over the last time I played. Watching my farmer actually growing produce was highly satisfying. So the game kind of fiddled with this idea back in the day of special projects and legacy controlling regions and whatnot, and even had some issues with map management in the past. However, since then, all of these have been improved, which is really nice. The building of special projects isn't broken and is simple enough to complete. The map is actually interactable now, which is good and easy to navigate and understand. The idea of securing and locking down a region for your daimyo, hope I'm saying that right, is also really cool. Complete a particular objective and kill the local bad guys, and boom, it's yours, which unlocks new, unique region-locked resources. You can still connect villages to each other, so each village contributes to a whole empire and lets you build bigger and better stuff at each new village. And eventually you'll get to the really cool samurai stuff. I do feel like they could have and should have streamlined a bit of the gameplay a bit more, added more energy, more speed, and simplified the management just a bit. I mean, managing your villages and villagers feels a bit tedious at times, all while you're wondering if what you're even doing is even making a difference. But it does seem to be working, so that's good, I think. All in all, I think the game has made some serious progress towards becoming a finished product, but it's not yet. And yet it says it's fully released on Steam with version 1.0. Obviously that doesn't mean it's done, I understand that. However, for now, if you don't think or look into it and you just buy the game, then you'd be expecting a finished product. But it's not finished, obviously. It's got a lot of missing sound bugs. But I gotta end the video here, it's already getting too long. It's already gonna be over 10 minutes, and for that I deeply apologize. I normally never do that. But what do I think of the game now that it's fully released? Well, I pretty much feel exactly the same way I did when I first looked at the game. Basically, the game added a hell of a lot of new content, yet it never fixed the issues I mentioned in the past, which is more than a little frustrating. I highly appreciate the new content, but I would have preferred a more stable environment to play in. So some of the mechanics seem to actually work. However, it still feels super janky in terms of stability and management, or even of the grand scheme of all the things that they want you to do here. Perhaps with more time, the game will feel more familiar and comfortable, but in the beginning, it's a bit overwhelming. And sure, they added a lot of new content like the region system and the female character customizer and a plethora of other stuff, but it still feels like they kind of should have ironed out the bad before introducing more stuff into the mix. So after its full release, do I think the game is still worth its $30 asking price? Yes. Yes, I do. Do I think it's worth your time? Well, that kind of depends on you. If you've got the time for it, then sure. But this is a long-winded game. It requires a lot of time and dedication to really get into the good of it, and if you don't have that kind of time or dedication, then you might want to look for something else. I mean, if you don't have that, then you're not really going to be able to enjoy this game. Also, it's definitely going to be more fun with friends than alone, as it would take you far longer to play through the game solo in terms of the building of stuff. I mean, building a house takes forever because you got to put in stick by stick, wall by wall. So having an extra person there to help you out makes everything go a lot smoother. I think they've made good progress, and the game is a lot bigger now than it was, which is great, but the fact that they still haven't fixed some of its issues from a year ago does concern me. To put it simply, my opinion on the game is about the same as it was before, perhaps just a bit higher. If I had given it a rating last time, I probably would have given it a 5. As of right now, I'd give it a 6. It improved a little bit, just not as much as I would have hoped for. Those stability issues just make it a lot harder to play and enjoy. But that's all I got for this. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. That's all the time I got for this first ever segment of Where Are They Now? If you enjoyed it or found it informative, then please like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, with a special thanks to those of you who stuck around to the end. I can't wait to see all of you again on my next adventure, and until then, I bid you all farewell.